Big power for a big railroad. Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi, and today I'm reviewing an HO scale C36-7 locomotive from Rapido Trains. My model is detailed and decorated for Union Pacific. Rapido offers the C36-7 in two versions. The MSRP for the DCC Ready version is $249.95. The MSRP for the DCC and Sound Equip version is $359.95. I pre-ordered and got my Sound Equip version for $319.99 from Train World. We'll start the model at 100 possible points. Like some of Rapido's other recent offerings, the box is surrounded by a plastic sleeve. The lid is a snug fit. Opening the box reveals stickers, exploded view drawings, and an owner's manual with DCC and other information. The exploded view drawings are very detailed. The sheet says the illustration is of the Conrail version, but it should be sufficiently close for other railroads as well. Among other things, the owner's manual explains the default function key assignments. One caveat is that it says to let the engine sit for 5 minutes to fully discharge the capacitors before trying to use it with a loc programmer. The box is lined with foam. A parts bag is included in a pocket near the top of the engine. A plastic cradle holds the model. There are foam pieces around the plastic that tend to fall out. The handrails on the model have foam protectors on the ends as well as the sides. This is an excellent box that should do a good job protecting the model for storage and transport. The General Electric C36-7 was a 6-axle diesel-electric locomotive, part of GE's -7 line. Some were rated at 3,600 horsepower and others, including those on the Union Pacific, were rated at 3,750. These locomotives came to UP via merger. Missouri Pacific placed an order for 60 General Electric C36-7 units in 1985. MoPac opted for a larger-than-standard 4,500-gallon fuel tank, which required the air reservoirs to be relocated inside the locomotive body. As a result, there are no visible air reservoirs on the model. In those days, Missouri Pacific had not yet completely disappeared into the UP system, and these locomotives were delivered in UP yellow with Missouri Pacific lettering. A photo I found of the real 9036 shows it with this lettering in 1986. In 1988 and 1989, UP's North Little Rock shops rebuilt the engines. Most of them emerged from the shop with Union Pacific lettering, though they retained their same road numbers and MoPac-style numerals on the cab sides. 9036 was upgraded in July 1988. Rapido labeled the box as 1988 Plus, so it no doubt is intended to reflect the appearance of the real thing after it was shopped in that year. I couldn't find any photos from 1988, but I compared the model to photos of 9036 taken circa 1990, and it appears to be very accurate for that time. Sometime after 1990, 9036 lost its class lights. A photo from 1995 shows the unit with ditch lights, no class lights, and Union Pacific-style numbers on the cab sides. Some of these units had rooftop beacons, but I didn't find any photos of 9036 with one, even as a MoPac unit. I only found a couple of very minor possible discrepancies. One feature on the real 9036 not present on the model is the slanted cylindrical MU cable holder that UP used on a lot of diesels in this era. Photos from 1990 show that it should be on the front pilot right about here. I don't have a good enough rear shot to know if there was one on that end as well, though that would be fairly common UP practice. This is minor enough that I'm not going to take any points off, and it may have been added after the 1988 shopping. I've made details like that for some of my other UP engines from brass tubing. Photos also suggest that the firecracker antenna on the roof should be gray, not silver, though none of the photos I found are clear enough to say for certain, so I'm going to let that go. It would be a very easy touch-up. Overall, the model is an excellent representation of the real thing as it appeared in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Some of these units were renumbered in 1995 and 1996 to UP's 2600 series, but 9036 was apparently not one of those. It was renumbered 7978 in October 2000 and was retired in June 2001. This unit and most of the other UP C36-7s were exported to Estonia in 2002. They were converted to 5-foot gauge for service in that country. The paint on the model is opaque. It's thick enough to slightly soften small details like the latches on the doors, though the effect is not too noticeable and would probably disappear with some weathering. The markings are crisp and most of the tiny stencils on the shell are legible, though it may take magnification to read them. I didn't spot any voids in the Union Pacific lettering on the sides and only a couple small ones in the upper red stripe at panel seams. I like how Rapido does the handrails with metal wire and plastic stanchions. They're flexible enough that they should withstand careful handling. The trucks have freestanding brake lines. The side frames also have spare knuckle holders, and the front ones have red cables on the rear axle. On the engineer's side front truck, there's a brake chain made from real chain. The axles with exposed roller bearings have rotating end caps. In front, the engine has separately applied windshield wipers. The numbers in the number boards appear to be applied under or on the back of a layer of clear plastic glazing, making them look like numbers behind glass. Lower down, the pilot has an uncoupling lever, hoses, and a plow. The drop steps on both ends are operable and can be put in the up or down position. These look a little fragile, so I'd recommend handling them carefully. The cab side windows don't appear to be openable. It's hard to see, but inside the cab has a complete interior. The cab has photo-etched sunshades. There are mirrors on the engineer's side only, which matches prototype photos. In back, the model has freestanding wire grab irons and a detailed rear pilot. The grab irons on the short hood are freestanding, though they seem a little oversized to my eye. On top of the cab, the model has a firecracker-style antenna and a vent. The horn is positioned just behind the cab and offset to one side, which also matches photos of the real thing. These ex-MoPac units had a boxy dynamic brake section that looks similar to the dynamic brakes on later Dash 8 models. I'm not sure how well this will show up on camera, but the dynamic brake has see-through grills on both the top and left side. The exhaust stack does not extend down into the model. The center is painted black to give the illusion of depth. Again, this might be a little hard to see on camera, but the radiator grills are also see-through and there is detail inside. Underneath the sill, there's enough detail to look good when the model is on the track, though not as much as on some other recent models in this price range. I like the traction motor cables on the left side, which are visible from certain angles when the model is on the rails. The wheels have the common RP25 tread profile. All the axles are powered and all the wheels pick up current. The model has Rapido knuckle couplers on both ends. Looking for a match on the horizontal center line, the front coupler is close enough to call it good. The rear coupler is also good. All the wheels are in gauge according to the NMRA standards gauge. There is no body wobble. The model weighs 18.8 ounces. For comparison, the Scale Trains SD40-2 I reviewed recently weighed 18.2. Drawbar pull peaked at 3.1 ounces, respectable, though less than the 4.2 ounces I recorded for the Scale Trains SD40-2. I'm running the locomotive on DCC. The engine has an ESU LoCsound Series 5 DCC and sound decoder. I haven't changed any of the default decoder settings. Like a lot of DCC decoders, the address is set to 3 by default. The number boards, step lights, and instrument cluster lights turn on by default. The manual mentions that the step lights can be turned off if desired. F8 toggles the sound on and off. F0 turns on the headlight. F5 turns on the class lights. Both are directional so that the front headlights and class lights are on when the engine is set to move forward, and the rear lights come on in reverse. The headlights seem a little dim and unfocused, not a bright pinpoint source of light. F2 sounds the horn. The length of the toot depends on how long the F2 key is pressed. F1 rings the bell. F10 activates the brake function. The locomotive will decelerate according to the momentum settings programmed into the decoder and stop. Pressing F10 again releases the brake and the locomotive will start moving. F4 puts the engine in dynamic brake mode. F9 activates the drive hold feature. This can be used to simulate a heavy train starting on a grade. Or a locomotive that is coasting. The locomotive has no issues on Kato 550mm curves, which are equivalent to a 21 5/8 inch radius. The model runs very smoothly. With the sound off, it's pretty quiet. The model has a Rapido MoPower capacitor circuit that will keep it running for a few seconds if it loses track power. Since it's my preference, I'm going to swap the couplers for Katie's. I'm sure the Rapido couplers would work just fine. They are metal, so there's not really a reason to do this except that I just prefer that. So I'm going to take the draft gear boxes out. They come out pretty easy. While I have the couplers off, this is a good time to take a look at the inside. These models have a set of 4 screws, 2 on either end of the fuel tank, that you have to remove before you can take the shell off. I didn't really mention it during the paint and detail section, but the bottoms of the gearboxes here are actually made to look like traction motors, which is kind of neat. Okay, now the shell should come off. Hopefully it does feel loose. There we go. All right, pretty easy. It looks like all the electronics on this engine are in the chassis, and there's light pipes in here that take the light up to the headlight, which is probably why the headlights are a little bit dim. I kind of prefer it when the LEDs are shining direct through the headlight rather than, you know, this is shining up and then it's getting bent, so that would explain why it's a little bit dimmer than I like. The setup here is pretty standard. It's got a 21-pin decoder. This is the Loc-Sound decoder. If you bought the DCC ready version, it would probably have a dummy plug here, and you could replace it with a decoder of your choice. The speakers are back here. I don't know if Rapido ships speakers in the non-sound versions or not, but in the sound version, they're back here. It looks like it's got 2 the cell phone style speakers, although they're fairly large ones. That might explain why the sound is really nice on this engine. The Rapido couplers have a separate spring, so I had to remove the coupler and the spring from the draft gear box. I'm using Katie 158 whisker couplers. They fit fine, except that the draft gear box clamps them a little too tightly and they don't swing side to side, so I filed down the top of it a little bit. That did the trick. Now the Katie works perfectly. I lucked out and the coupler heights came out right, so this engine's now ready for service on my layout. Once the layout's built, of course. Well, we got ourselves another perfect score. I think this year must be some kind of record. I think there's been like 4. That's kind of unusual. I'm hoping it's a trend. You know, it's usually the coupler height that is the downfall of a lot of models, and this one was okay. And there's been a few others that have been like that, so that's nice to see. I would like to see more of that. Anyway, I'd like to go a little bit beyond the score, though, and talk a little bit more about this model. I kind of had a few things I really like about it, and a few things I was kind of thought were maybe a little lackluster. I'll go for the cons first. The headlights are a little disappointing. They're not really very bright. I mean, they look bright on video maybe, but almost any headlight looks bright on video. But when they're in person, they're just kind of not that focused. They look a little, I don't know, just dim. So I think that could be a little better. Also, like, I think the grills on the side of the engine, on the sides of the long hood, would look a lot better weathered, because as they are, they don't really have a lot of depth to them. And most of the photos that I've seen, they're actually kind of dirty. So I think that would definitely be something worth doing to this model, because it looks kind of like, it reminds me of the older Atlas C30-7 from years ago in terms of that particular aspect. Also, I was a little disappointed that there weren't any walkway lights, although it does have step lights, which is really cool. Pros on this engine, of course, it does have the cool, console lights inside, which is kind of neat. And I have to say, the sound on this engine is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if it comes across on video very well, but it's very throaty and bassy, much more so than most of the other models that I've reviewed. And I was really impressed with that, because it really sounds cool. A lot of diesels, they suffer from small speakers, which can only reproduce so much bass, no matter how, high-tech they are, or how high-tech the enclosures are. There's always a little bit of tinniness, kind of. And this one has much less of that. It's very, very nice. It's a very nice sounding engine, so I really liked that. It's also a very nice running engine. So it is a little bit on the plain side, but that's just because that's how the prototype was. Union Pacific tended to go for a little more no frills kind of things, like, not adding all the extra lights like SP. So as an SP guy, sometimes the engines without all that stuff look a little plain, but that's just how they look. So that no fault there. I think it's a pretty good model overall, and I think it'll look good on the Donner layout. Their Union Pacific Power was no stranger to that line even before the merger, so I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun running this one on the layout. Let's see what we've got. No deductions. The model gets a perfect 100-point score and earns an A+. This is a very nice model, and it deserves a green signal. I think Rapido did a really nice job on this model. If you're looking for an HO scale C36-7, then I think you might like it. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.